Gravers are another important tool that you'll be needing at the bench. Gravers are used for texturing metal, raising beads, and bright cutting around stones. A flat graver is used for bright cutting around stones, a 52 round is used for raising beads, and a line graver or Florentine graver is used for a Florentine finish on a ring. You will need a number of different pliers to do jewelry work. Some of the pliers that you will be needing, for instance, is a chain nose pliers. Chain nose pliers will be one of the most versatile tools that you'll have. You use them for bending prongs, closing jump rings, and bending chains and fastening other items to chains. This is a pair of ring bending pliers. This is used for bending ring shanks together during sizing and other operations, also used for bending heavy shank. On these particular pair, I've taken and I made a brass collet so that it would fit over the jaws of these pair of pliers. I did this so that it wouldn't damage the material that I happen to be bending. As you can see, it has very sharp edges in here, and it could damage the metal. Using brass or copper, which is softer than the gold, you won't damage the piece and put a bunch of marks on it. This is a pair of flat nose pliers. Flat nose pliers are used for bending things at 90-degree angle and also for holding things while you're filing or sawing. They work well for grasping on items. You also need a pair of flush cutting nippers for removing excess tips after setting stones and cutting wire. This is a pair of half-round pair of pliers, one with a flat side, also one with a half-round side. It's used for bending half-rounded, flat sheet, and wire. This is a pair of needle nose round pliers. This is used for bending kidney wires while you're making earrings and bending other types of flat sheet. This is a pair of stone setting pliers. These are used for setting stones, Tiffany heads, 4-prong settings. You use these for bending over the tips of prongs. You also need a pair of shears for cutting solder and other sheet type of metal. One thing that's very important with your pliers is that the interior of the plier is smooth and free of any dents. Otherwise, it leaves an impression on the piece of metal you are working with. The next important tool group are your measuring devices. Here we have a vernier caliper, which is used for measuring stones. You can take the outside diameter measurement of the stone, then remove the stone, and then it will enable you to pick up the correct burr that you'll be needing to use. The next important tool is a spring gauge. The spring gauge is used to measure the thickness of the metal that you happen to be working with. It's also used to get up into rings so that you can measure the thickness of the top of the ring. The next important measuring tool is your pair of dividers. The dividers are used so that you can mark out straight lines on metal, and so that you can remove metal from a ring when you're sizing by taking the measurement of the amount that you'll need for the ring and placing that mark on the shank. You will need a good selection of files to enable you to work on a variety of metal shapes. Here we have a barrette file, which has one side that is smooth with no teeth. The other side has teeth. This is a large rat tail file. This is a square or triangular file. This is a flat file. This is a large barrette file. This is a half round large file, and this is a half round inside ring file. This smaller file will enable you to get into a ring much easier than this larger half round file. This is a set of small needle files which enables you to do a lot smaller work. You'll need ring manuals and ring sizers. You want to make sure that you have both sets, thin ring sizers and wide ring sizers. You also want to correlate the size of the ring manual to the ring sizer so that it enables you to have the correct size during sizing. You also need to have mallets. You'll need several types of mallets. One is a dead blow mallet. It has steel shot in the center and it's plastic. It's used for hitting and pounding up rings. And you also need a rawhide mallet. You need to have a soldering surface. Here are a few examples. Here we have a charcoal block. It's important to bind it with binding wire so it doesn't fall apart. It's also heat reflective and hot metal won't melt to it. This is a magnesia block. This works real well for using to pin down your work. As you can see, you can push your items right down into it. This is a transite block, which is very hard, but it absorbs more heat than the other two blocks. One thing that's very important is that you don't want to use asbestos.
When selecting a torch, there are several variables to consider. Most of these have to do with the choice of fuel source. The three most common for use by the jeweler are natural gas, propane, and acetylene. They all have different costs and working characteristics. Fuel gases contain different amounts of heat energy, or BTUs, for a given volume of the gas. They also have different natural velocities, or speeds at which they burn, and they use different amounts of oxygen for combustion. These factors determine the flame characteristics of a particular gas and will influence your choice of torch and fuel configuration. Acetylene, for instance, has the hottest inner flame, while propane has a high outer flame temperature. The jeweler needs to choose a torch which best fills the needs of his or her operation. No gas will burn without oxygen. For a common flame, such as a candle or a campfire, there is sufficient oxygen in the surrounding atmosphere to allow combustion. Any flame will, however, burn hotter with the addition of more oxygen. The pre-technological method, and one which is still widely used by jewelers around the world, was to force more oxygen into the flame using a blowpipe. Today, pure oxygen is available compressed in tanks, as are the fuel gases. A regulator at the tank determines the pressure of the gas delivered to the torch, and different fuel gases require slightly different oxygen pressures for efficient burning. Be sure you know the safety procedures for setting up your system. A variety of torch tips are needed for different jobs. Very small tips are used for pinpoint accuracy on delicate pieces, and larger tips will diffuse the heat over a larger area.
There are many torch tips available for your torch, whether you're using natural gas, propane, or acetylene. This particular torch tip has a large orifice or opening, which enables me to use it on annealing or melting large amounts of metal. This torch tip is a little bit smaller. I also like to take the ends of the solder paste dispenser and install it into a torch tip so that it enables me to get into smaller spaces with a smaller flame. When you're lighting the torch, it's very important that you don't turn the gas up too much or the fuel. Just crack it just very lightly, put it up against your striker, and then strike it. This way it'll give you a small about 2 inches or so on your fuel flame. Then you want to gently bring in the oxygen and bring it down to a nice crisp point. You'll need a container of pickle, which removes hardened fused flux and boric acid and some oxides from the piece that you have heated.
Most pickle comes as a dry powder, but remember that it is an acid. You always add acid to water. Acid has a higher boiling point than water, so by adding acid to water, you minimize the chance of an explosive reaction. Always mix chemicals in a well-ventilated area. The pickle pot is heated and will slowly evaporate the solution. Do not let it run dry, since it may not have an automatic shutoff and could cause a fire.
It's a good idea to have a water rinse right next to your pickle so that you can dip your piece right into the water rinse so that you don't dribble pickle all over your sink. You also want to make sure that you use the correct type of tongs. The recommended tongs are copper or bamboo. The flex shaft is a very versatile tool that you'll need at the jeweler's bench. I have here on this particular flex shaft a quick change handpiece. This particular handpiece is used by depressing this lever and installing a burr, drill, or any type of grinding wheel in it. The shaft on your particular burr needs to be 3/32. Another handpiece that you can get for your flex shaft is this larger version. This particular flex shaft will fit any size burr or drill, and it's used with a opening and closing key. This is a hammer hand piece. This is used for riveting, and it's also used for bezel setting. It's also important that you use eye protection during the use of the flex shaft. In addition to the flex shaft, you'll need a full-size buffing machine. You need to polish repaired work just like you do newly created work. Over here we have a steam cleaner. The steam cleaner removes dirt, grease, and polishing compounds very efficiently. It's very hot, and you need to use either bamboo tongs or insulated tweezers. Over here we have the ultrasonic. This is a very efficient cleaning tool. It's very important in the shop, but you need to use precautions while using it.
Some of the cleaning solutions used in ultrasonic machines react unfavorably with certain materials. It is best not to place turquoise, malachite, glued stones, emeralds, pearls, or shell in the ultrasonic. As a general rule, most stones which are above 7 on the hardness scale can be safely placed in the ultrasonic cleaner. If you have any doubt about cleaning a stone in the ultrasonic, clean it by hand instead. Insulate jewelry from the metal sides of the ultrasonic so that the vibration does not mar the finish. It is also recommended that the machine be turned off before you reach your hand into the solution. Do not use chlorinated solvents in the ultrasonic. Mixing ammonia with a chlorinated detergent will release chlorine gas, which is highly toxic.
In the gold testing kit, you have a few items in the kit that you'll have to know about. One is the test stone. This is for scratching the item onto, to make a mark onto this particular stone. Then you have your test needles. The test needles have a varied amount of gold on the tips. This starts at 22, 18, 14, and 10 karat. Then you also have one that's 99 fine silver. Then you have your assorted acids. We have an acid that will test red golds or rose golds, 18 karat, 14 karat, and 10 karat. Then you have a special silver testing solution. We'll proceed and test a ring. At this point, I'll take a look at the ring to see if the ring happens to have any marks on it. This particular ring appears to me to be of brass origin or maybe a plated ring. So I would take a little bit of the acid and test it. At this point, I'll take a little bit of 14 karat and place it on the item. You can see it turns green and starts to fizz. This tells me that this particular ring is brass. This ring here looks to me like it's a gold. You can see that it's worn on the outside, and on the top side it doesn't have a brassy look to it. So in order to find a carat, what I want to do is scratch it onto my stone and putting a small little R above it. Then I will take the 14 karat and the 10 karat. Then I want to place some nitric acid on here, the 14 karat solution. The acid will start working on the base metals in the gold. The higher the carat, the more resistant the lines will be to the nitric acid. As you can see, the reaction is very, very subtle, but you can see that the 10 karat line is completely gone. The 14 and the ring are very, very similar as in the amount of metal that's left on the stone. Anything above 14 karat, you have to use aqua regia.
Use proper caution and adequate ventilation with all chemicals. Always keep chemicals in well-sealed and well-marked containers, away from children, pets, and food preparation areas. It is an employer's responsibility to make available a Material Safety Data Sheet, or MSDS, for every chemical in the shop, and to be sure that everyone who uses these chemicals knows how to read and understand